which brings me to the next speaker, which is Arie Kleijwegt. He's one of the guys in the Netherlands that deals with preparations for these kind of Bundfires. And you can imagine that we from the Netherlands, when half a year and a half ago we traveled to Houston, we were very curious about how did the suppression take place. And the Chemical Safety Board is working on a report, but we would like to hear the lessons from guys like Richard and other fire chiefs that were involved in suppressing this fire. And you can imagine how happy we were that we had the opportunity to speak with people like Richard. And now we are trying to translate his lessons in our preparations. And in the Netherlands, we have therefore the Unified Fire Brigade in the Rotterdam Harbor area. And Arie Kleijwegt, he's the one who's for a bigger part responsible for these preparations. And I'm very happy that he's willing to share his view on how to prepare for those kind of fires. So Arie, would you get on the screen and tell us how you prepare for those kind of fires in your area?
Of course, Niels, thank you for this kind introduction. Good morning to you all, or perhaps I have to say good afternoon to some of you already. It's my pleasure to present to you the tactical approach of these Bundfires in Rotterdam. Thanks also to the organization, to Philip, for giving us the opportunity to tell our story, and a great opportunity, of course, to learn from each other. So if you give me a couple of seconds, I will share my screen with you all.
It works, Arie. Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Niels. Perhaps first introduce myself. My name is Arie Kleijwegt. I work for the Unified Fire Department. I'm a member of the management team over there, and mainly responsible for the preparation of our emergency response in the port of Rotterdam. Next to that, I'm also for more than 20 years now a fire chief in Rotterdam and surroundings. And well, to start with you, completely honest, I did respond in the last 20 years to many fires, but I never responded to a Bundfire. So I can hardly say I'm an expert based on experience, but nevertheless, I like to exchange you some info about the approach which we use here in Rotterdam, and hopefully it will be useful for you all in your own company or area. Before we get to the Bundfires, I'd like to tell you something about the Port of Rotterdam, which is relevant for the emergency response. I'd like to tell you shortly about our organization and the way we are organized, and then we get to the legislation of the Bundfires here in the Netherlands and the tactical approach. First of all, the Port of Rotterdam, sorry to be a little bit chauvinistic, but it's the biggest port in Europe. It is a very important port for the economy of the Netherlands, but not only for the Netherlands, but also for Europe in total. A lot of export and import for the Netherlands, but also for Germany, Switzerland, Eastern Europe is going via the port of Rotterdam. Daily, there work more than 300,000 people in the port of Rotterdam. And you have to imagine that it is a very concentrated area. Refineries, storage terminals, container terminals, they are all close together. And even the urban area is closely integrated into the port of Rotterdam. This means, with other words, that no intervention on an incident or a fire, letting the fire go for a couple of hours or even days, is totally unrealistic in Rotterdam and also unacceptable. The port is characterized by much maritime and petrochemical industry. There are 4 large refineries, One of them is of Shell, the colleagues of Richard. There are several storage terminals. We have one large LNG terminal, several container terminals who can berth the largest container vessels in the world. Rotterdam is also an important hub for the container transport to the UK or Scandinavia. Several chemical facilities and 5 hazardous goods train yards in the port. In general, you can say that the port of Rotterdam is a safe port. We had large incidents in the past, but the number of incidents during the year is limited, and the majority of the incidents stay small, or we can keep them small. But nevertheless, the emergency response in the port is still a challenge, which brings me to my organization, which is actually some kind of a mutual aid organization. It is a joint venture between the city of Rotterdam and 65 companies in the port. Actually, for these 65 companies who participate into our organization, we are their company fire brigade. So we respond to public incidents as well as incidents in the industrial area. We do that daily with about 300 employees, including firefighters and staff, and we respond out of 9 fire stations, which allows us to be on every spot in the port in approx 6 minutes. And well, it goes without saying that we are specialized in industrial fires and incidents because of our working area. A quick look on the map. This is the port of Rotterdam. From east to west, it is about 50-60 kilometers wide, which is in miles, I think 34-35 miles. And on this image, you can also see the participants next to the city of Rotterdam. Also companies like Shell, BP, ExxonMobil, Lyondell, Vopak, they participate in our organization, and we are their company fire brigade. Some quick images of our work: firefighting on board of ships, industrial incidents, incident with hazardous goods, oil spill. It all belongs to our work, and we even have a rope rescue team for incidents. For example, in this case, in a container crane. Well, this all leads us to the story of the Bundfires. For us, it started in 2016, 2017. There was a major change in legislation in Holland, where the authorities stated that the scenario of a Bundfire was a realistic one and a credible scenario. So, with other words, the industry had to prepare themselves on this scenario. They had to cover this scenario. And secondly, the authorities had the opinion that this scenario had to be covered by fixed systems. And this new legislation is applicable in Rotterdam for about 150 tankbunds. So you can imagine that there was some resistance from the industry, because this meant a large investment for the industry in fixed systems. That was also the moment that we suggested to give us 1 year time to run a project in order to investigate if a mobile system, a mobile tactic, was also an alternative solution for this scenario, and most probably a reasonable solution. So actually that was the start for 1 year of project in which we studied the specific bunds in the port of Rotterdam, the Bundfires. We did pay also Richard a visit, as already mentioned by Niels. Lessons learned from this incident, very worthwhile. And we did also study the heat radiation and other risks of this scenario. we had two goals actually, and at the end two results, in our opinion, that we had a realistic and for all a safe mobile strategy for the Bundfires, and that we convinced the authorities to accept this alternative instead of a fixed system. This all took place in about 1 year, in which we also did visit Deer Park. Which brings me to the characteristics of the Bundfire, which is the start, and these points are all very evident, but nevertheless very relevant for this scenario. As Richard already mentioned, we're talking about a huge scenario. This is a disaster for the company. This is a disaster for the companies next to the Bund, and also a disaster for the surroundings. We're talking also about a long-lasting incident. It is not just a matter of extinguishing the fire, but the impact of this incident will take days, weeks, and probably years. There are various variable factors which have impact on this scenario. For example, the meteor, the wind direction, the size bunds, and the size and number of the tanks. What is the product which is stored? What will be the heat radiation? And of course, the heat radiation will also depend on the product. And what is the surrounding of the Bund? What is the surrounding of the plant? What will be the impact on the environment? No Bundfire, of course, is the same. That used for actually for every fire. Every fireman knows that, but especially Bundfires. Look at all the examples in the past. There are examples. No Bundfire is the same. And as Richard stated, major impact on surroundings and the environment. Now, two examples of these use scenario, very well known incidents. I suppose among the audience there are people who were present during Bundsfield or were present during Deer Park. They know that this is not just a huge fire, it's also a huge impact on everything around it. This all brings us to a couple of, in our opinion, crucial conditions. First of all, in our opinion, you have to respond quickly to this scenario. You can make the difference in the first 30 minutes. And in order to do something, you have to establish a quick, sufficient water supply. And you have to be sure that your foam logistics is under control. You must be sure that the foam is there when it's needed. Only start a fight with enough ammo. Secondly, we have an old saying in Holland, which goes, things you rarely do well. And this is a scenario, fortunately, which doesn't happen every day. This is a very rare scenario. So choose your strategy as close as possible to business as usual in order to minimize the chance of failure. We choose to use our own fire engines, probably with assistance of UGVs, which is the abbreviation of unmanned ground vehicle. I will come to that later on. Water supply is done by submersible high capacity pumps. Submersible pumps are used by fire brigades all over the world for decades. No rocket science. And as Deer Park told us, have a clear command structure, and your command structure must be as regular as possible. That is what people are used to. Third, be flexible. This is a difficult scenario. Circumstances can fluctuate during the incident, and you must be able to anticipate on this scenario and be able to anticipate on these fluctuating circumstances. Your equipment must be able to reposition during the incident, and because you have one mobile system, it must be suitable for all kind of plants. Fourth, and probably the most important one, it must be done safely. If necessary, personnel on sufficient distance. And for this, we use the UGVs, the unmanned ground vehicles, which allows us to respond quickly without getting personnel close to the bund or the dike. Secondly, we use our drone team, which we have now for 2 or 3 years within our fire department. We have excellent experience with this team. It gives you a very clear and detailed view of your incident, and it allows commanding officers to have this view to make the plan or adjust the plan without getting close to the incident. Last, and also mentioned by Richard, is the planning. Be prepared for the big one, I would say, and with preparation, I mean in every respect, training your firefighters regularly, training your officers in strategy. Be sure that there is a pre-fire plan of every bund, that there is a general logistic plan who covers the phone logistics, as well as the logistics of the equipment, that the equipment is there in the right time and in the right place. And last, be sure that there is a inspection, testing and maintenance program for the equipment. The equipment is not used every day, so you must be sure that it functions when it's needed. So this is a very simplified image of the material and the tactics, but I suppose it gives a good impression of what we thought of. And it's also according to the crucial condition. It is a quick response with our own engine, as you can see here, or probably with the UGVs. The water supply is done by submersible pumps with 2 times a 12-inch hose, which feeds the foam master, where we can add the foaming agent and get the right pressure for the fire engine. So business as usual. We are flexible, and with the drone in the air, we can have a good view of the foam blanket or other aspects of this incident, and we can adjust the plan if necessary. The second advantage is that we are planning to use this system not only for this scenario, but also for other scenarios. This simplified image, right on the top, there's the Bundfire, which I just explained. Right below is the full service fire. And as you can see, we are using more or less the same system. The same pumps, the same hoses, and the same foam boosters. The only difference is the monitors. In case of a full service fire, we use high capacity removable monitors instead of our own fire engines or the UGVs. But in general, it is more or less the same tactic, which makes it easier to practice and to run your pre-planning. So where are we now? Right now in Rotterdam, we are actually right now purchasing the necessary equipment, the monitors, the pumps, the hoses, etc. We are planning to training our firefighters in this scenario and our office in the second half of this year. And we hope to be operational by the 1st of January of next year, 2022. So this brings me more or less to the end of my presentation. At the end, I like to emphasize 4 important issues in this strategy for big scenarios like Bundfires. First of all, choose your strategy as close as possible to business as usual. It really minimizes the chance of failure. Secondly, be prepared. For the big one, be prepared in every respect, in training, in inspection, testing, monitoring, in pre-planning, etc. Third, be flexible in your strategy. You must be able to anticipate on fluctuating circumstances during this incident. And last but definitely not least, stay safe. This scenario is like every fire, not without risk. Consider the use of UGVs, consider the use of drones. It will really help you fighting these kind of fires. So thank you all for your attention. I hope it was useful, and I think I hand it over right now to you, Niels.